Hey everyone, welcome back to DemDMs. My name is Fox Ghost.
I'm Panda Ghost.
And I'm Matt.
And today we're going to be talking about session prep. So if everyone's ready, let's slide on in. Since I'm the least experienced when it comes to DMing out of the three of us, I'm primarily going to let you guys do the talking and, give my interjections as often as possible. So, guys, what do you guys do for session prep?
That's a very interesting question.
Okay, let me phrase it this way. Since we do a lot of online and a lot offline, let's start first with what do you guys do for online session prep?
Way too much work.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. It depends. So usually a lot of my time is spent on finding maps that I like. And then usually the rest of it is on, monster creation for Roll20 or whatever thing we're using.
Getting stat blocks and stuff.
Yeah, but the maps are really where I feel like I take the most time, because I do some like photo editing of the maps sometimes if they're not exactly what I like, and then I also have to scale them up and get them the right size and everything like that, and put some stuff on the GM layer and all that good stuff. So that's usually where I spend a lot of my time, and then 9 times out of 10, I feel like my actual like writing for the session is like maybe a page, if at all. You know what I mean? Like if I know what I'm doing, sometimes I don't even write anything because I already kind of know what the case may be. But like, yeah, it kind of depends. But and then it all. Sometimes I also may spend some time on like music choices and things like that for different maps and stuff.
Well, I guess that also matters if you're running a pre-written or a homebrew campaign as well.
Right.
Because so my only experience really is with pre-written campaigns, and I know that you got to make sure you read the module, make sure you don't miss anything when you're session prepping for that. Which I assume, because I know we use Roll20, I know that Roll20 has a lot of campaigns built in, and they actually have the maps already in there, so that would definitely cut down on your prep time as well.
Yeah, as well as like dynamic lighting and stuff like that's already set up.
Yeah, right.
Which is a huge time saver.
Yeah, when I did my first campaign on Roll20, I used the dynamic lighting. That would add an extra hour per map, I would say, of session prep. Now, I was also a lot of times making maps from scratch myself as well. But like, especially if you wanted to look good for the dynamic lighting, like if you have trees or things that are just odd shapes, right? That's that takes a lot of time. Usually, I mean, good session prep always comes down to good game prep, right? It's like for my games, I don't have to do a whole lot of session prep aside from the setting up, the maps and such, because I prep,
well in advance.
Right? I have good different charts that I can reference. I know what monsters I'm going to be running in my game before I even run the game. I'm not just like, oh, here's a monster, I'm going to chuck it in, right? I know months in advance what monsters I'm going to be running, so I already have those in Roll20, or now with the Beyond 20 app, I don't even need to bring them into Roll20. I can just use my D&D Beyond books, right, and press the button for when I want to roll an attack for a monster. Works great.
See, yeah, I think that's where you and I differ a little, Panda. Because, like, I'll write the story, at least the broad strokes of it, all out before I even sit down to play the first session, obviously. But, like, just the way that I like to run my games, there is no way that I would ever know where you're going the next session.
Oh, right, same. But, like, generally, like, if they are going to this place, they're not like, let's say they're going to going on a boat, right? They're not going to be fighting a Remoraz on a boat, right?
Yeah.
Hey, you never know.
Pretty sure Remorazes only live in Arctic climates, but
yeah,
you get the point. If you prep and well understand your world or the world that you're playing in, and you understand the monsters that you're using, then it makes your session prep all the easier, right?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people's tendency is to like, both for session and for overall game prep, is to like really get into every single nuance, and so you're prepared. You know what you're doing. You don't have to worry about skipping a beat. I think for me specifically, a lot of the times I like to improvise a lot of things. Like, you know, we'll go to a randomly to a library in the world, and people are like, oh, what are the 12 books that I can find? Now, I've never written anything about this, so I need to think on the fly. What are we doing? What is their goal in reading these books? And what kind of information makes sense to get them to the next thing? And I could have tried to write some of that if I would have spent some time thinking, okay, well, they're going to go to a library. What kind of things will be there? But like, I kind of like the lack of safety net, I guess, in that perspective, because then it really causes me to have to like think on my feet, and that's part of the fun for me as a DM. But not everybody likes that. So some people like to have that, already geared up and ready to go, so there's not a lot of fumbling.
Right.
We have a friend who DM'd Tomb of Annihilation, and did a very good job. Was a little bit of a new DM at the time, but because that is kind of like all over the place in terms of the world, in terms of the encounters, it just, there's no way he could have prepared everything for one session.
Right.
Like he had to kind of say like, okay, where are you guys wanting to go next session? And that at least gives him a starting point to figure out what.
That's always, I think that's always the crux of it too. You want to figure out where your players are going before the end, or at the end of the previous session. You want to know where your players are going, so you can prepare for where they're going, and prepare a little bit of side content if they get a little distracted, right? And you can't let them, like, if they're like, we're going east, and then they show up, the next session, they're like, no, we're going to go west now. No, they're going east, right? They said they're going east. You've prepared for them to go east. They're going east. Right?
Or at the very least, if they say, oh, we want to go west, well, now everything that was east is now west.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That works if you're doing world building on the fly, but like something like Tomb of Annihilation, you can't really do that.
Yeah, and that's always my problem of giving players maps. Because then they know where everything is, and they're like, wait a minute, that would have taken us like 3 weeks to get there, and it only took us 4 days because you only had 4 days worth of random encounters to do. You know what I mean? Like that's ridiculous. Why would that make any sense? And the players kind of have to work with the DM. They have to realize that the DM is as human as they are, and is not going to be able to prepare for every single thing, and give them a little bit of leeway in that. One of the things that I love to do as a DM is, if for whatever reason you're going to a new area that I have not prepared, I'll be like, okay, your characters are walking, and you see this thing, and kind of let you guys like look at that shiny light, if you will, as for insects, while I over here finish the thing that I didn't do. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of the smoke and mirrors game that I tend to play a lot. Is just be like, oh, look over there real quick while I fix this thing.
Right.
So yeah.
Also, so it seems like aside from the map prep stuff, what's different about for you guys at least? What's different between prepping for online and prepping for in person? Because if most of your prep time's getting maps and stuff ready, online, then it seems like your time in person is cut down quite significantly.
I mean, you still have to draw maps for encounters ahead of time, or at least have an idea of what it's going to look like. But for me, I'm one of those DMs that if I don't have a miniature that I'm going to need, I need to buy that miniature. Like that's the one thing I need to do. And
I mean, you don't
it's slowly
need
becoming
to
a problem.
buy
Yeah, I kind of normally no, but for me, yes.
I'm like a 40K person.
For you normal people out there, you don't need to buy miniatures for everything. Matt here is abnormal.
I like to have the things. But no, in-person gaming, I think for my preps side of things, it's knowing the story, knowing where things are going to happen and what's going to happen. And then usually for in-person, it's having the monster stat blocks down and ready to know what I'm going to do, especially if I have spellcasters. If I have spellcasters in a encounter, I need to know what all of those spells can do for me,
right?
Because I don't want to sit there for half an hour and look up all the spells I decided that this person can cast, So usually I tend to go with very generic spells like Fireball, Magic Missile, Shield, like things that I offhand know what they do and how to run them. So that way it's a very easy transition there. But yeah. I mean, do we want to talk about like tips for new DMs or for people that are trying to, figure out what all they actually need to prepare?
So since I'm pretty green, but I've done a little bit, I'd say it's much easier to, if you're a new DM, it's easier to run a pre-written campaign, obviously.
Sure.
And if you want to play online, it makes it easier because a lot of pre-written campaigns already in virtual tabletops, so that cuts down on your prep time. And just generally, just read the module. It has a lot of resources in there already, where it's going to tell you pretty much what you need to know. And then once you've run a couple pre-written campaigns, you'll get an idea of
all you need to
do. Right, how encounters are structured, how to handle dealing with your party that wants to do something that's not written down and things like that.
Yeah, I think my couple of tips are similar to yours, Fox. Number one, I am one of those people that needs to have a campaign notebook. So that way I keep everything organized. I keep all my stuff written down. I have maps drawn in there, whatever it is. So I highly recommend doing that. And then, per what you were saying earlier, when reading the module, read the whole thing. Do not read just what you need for this next session. Like read the next 4 chapters, because you're going to need to start laying the groundwork in that session possibly. And if you don't know that you need to do that, it's going to fall very flat later on. Like you might forget, oh, that's a character that I need to know what they do, or they need to be here, or whatever it is. And, just spending that little bit of extra time can really prepare you for just running a more seamless game.
Right. And then my biggest tip, in my 2 tips, one being for pre-written games, is, after you've read it, reread the next section the day before. Mm-hmm. So read and reread. Yeah. But then my other biggest tip is set restrictions and keep things simple. If you are writing your own campaign and building your own world or whatever, set restrictions on yourself. Taking art classes, right? Sometimes, they tell you limit yourself on what you can do, because limitations breed creativity. So that's my biggest tip as well. Don't give yourself access to that whole monster manual, right? Just be like, I only want to play with these monsters this session, right?
Yeah, and players realize that your DM is going to need a little bit of help from you to do that kind of limitation. Like, don't just randomly decide, oh, we're going to go 15 towns away. Kind of try to do your best to stick with what is being planned and what's being prepared for you. Obviously, feel free to, move around in that, but, realize that, like, if you go off to a random spot, your DM's going to be riffing, and some DMs can't do that. Right. So just be aware of that and be kind to your DM when that happens. But yeah, I mean, anything else, guys, that you want to mention here before we wrap this one up?
I think we're all good.
Yep.
All right. Well, join us next time we slide into DemDMs. All right, guys.
Bye.
Have a good one.
Peace.
Bye.
Thank you for watching the DemDMs podcast. We release a new video every Thursday. Feel free to continue the conversation in the comments down below. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm. Also, be sure to smite that like button, subscribe, and sneak attack the notification bell to ensure that you're up to date on all our new content.